views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Del Mar TV Foundation or the City of Del Mar.
Del Mar Hot Topics, where we discuss issues that are important to you. And now your host, Richard Levesque.
In many small cities around the country, the traditional downtown commercial district is under pressure to remain viable and vital. The Main Street program has proven to be successful in many of these communities, some of them here in Southern California. But can it be successful in Del Mar? 1 year into the program, it's time to take the pulse of Main Street. I'm your host, Richard Levesque, and you're watching Hot Topics. With me to discuss downtown revitalization are Richard Ernest, the former mayor of Del Mar, Linda Rock, former president of the Del Mar Village Association, Peter Norby, who really should know about Main Street as he's the executive director of the Downtown Encinitas Main Street Association, and of course our favorite restaurateur, Dan Speaker, the owner of Speakers. I'd like to start with the vision. Excite our viewers, turn them on to how will downtown look if Main Street's successful? Who'd like to go?
I'll take it. At least how I see it. I would like to see it. It's people on the streets, it's businesses bustling, it's people working together as far as storefronts and have a theme through the village, and just action. I mean, it's the stores are busy, the restaurants are busy, people are coming from out of town, people from in town are walking around, and it's good for everyone.
Richard?
Well, given that this is a local show with local viewers, most of the viewers of this show will be residents of the city. So I'm interested in what will the residents see and how will they feel. My vision has more to do with how you're going to feel rather than what it looks like.
And how will you feel?
I think it's going to feel like being in your own community living room. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to come downtown, stop, sit, look around, visit with people, visit with neighbors and friends, visit with tourists, and just enjoy being able to stroll and walk around the downtown without being afraid that, gee, I can't find a place to park. I'm not sure whether I want to go into this store or not, because the appearance will be appealing, it will be welcoming, and you're going to want to go in and explore and investigate.
Peter, is that possible with a small town like Del Mar?
It is possible, and downtowns function the best when they are the heart and soul of the community. And it's a very traditional concept. Downtowns all across America, big or small, are where festivals happen, where communities go in times of celebration, also in times of grief. And what's happened in the last 30 to 40 years, mostly since the interstate transportation system came in, is we've lost that sense of place, we've lost that sense of heart and soul, and we've basically just morphed into this generic template of a suburban or urban sprawl mentality. Mm-hmm. So when you recapture kind of that heart and soul, and it's a lot of intangibles that are, you can't neatly put on one page and say, here's how you do it. But speaking specifically of Encinitas, I think it's safe to say that several years ago, downtown Encinitas wasn't serving that function. It wasn't a popular place to go. When you had an aunt and uncle visit you, you did not take them to downtown Encinitas. And today, more so than ever, it's recapturing that spirit and that sense of heart and soul for the city of Encinitas.
Okay, so Linda, you've been trying to do this for a year. Is it doable in Del Mar?
Is it doable in Del Mar? Absolutely. I mean, I think I was very heartened when I heard how far into Main Street Encinitas is. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that is gradual, gains momentum, and it's just a series of small changes over time that together sort of end up with there being a very dramatic difference. And after a year, I think there has just been a tremendous set of changes that have begun. So we're seeing it in the number and the type of events we're holding. We're seeing it in some of the aesthetic design stuff. We're seeing it in broad community involvement and in overlap with other community groups and in working with the city. People are starting to see that this is a process that's not adversarial or win-lose, and it's one where everybody is going to benefit not just the merchants, but the residents and the city and so on.
So the vision you have is of a lively downtown. Can it stay lively in the middle of November on a Tuesday evening?
We have the best weather on the face of the planet. If we can't stay lively, and now I don't think we'll stay as lively as we would during the fair or during the race season. Certainly the summer is the most popular time, but there's no reason why in November, with holidays approaching, and in fact holidays in November, that you can't have the same kind of activity. The time change doesn't help, and you're going to have dark coming earlier, obviously. So the timing of different events would be different. But I think you could have a vibrant downtown all year round in San Diego, in Del Mar.
Yeah, it's not just, it's not the Main Street program around here. It's not just Encinitas. North Park has used it to basically the Hillcrest, Kensington, North Park area, Coronado, El Cajon, Northern California, Central California, Paso Robles, San Luis Obispo, Grass Valley, among many other successful communities. And it's a stakeholder-driven approach to restoration or revitalization of a historic commercial district or a downtown, rather than a council-driven approach or a consultant-driven approach. And anytime that you charge up the stakeholders, the property owners, the residents, and the merchants of an area, and get them working together, you've created a certain amount of energy, rather than just bringing in an outside person saying, here's how you're going to fix it.
So tell the viewers, what is a Main Street program? What is it concretely? Who runs it? Who manages it?
Going through kind of top to the local community, it started by the National Trust for Historic Preservation out of Washington, D.C. The reason it was started is because communities, we were basically losing our traditional downtowns all across America. We were bypassed by the freeways. We had competition from the new big boxes in the malls. We fell into disrepair. So it's organized by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and then traditionally state governments have a contract with the National Trust. So in California, that's the Parks Office, California State Parks. There's an Office of Historic Preservation, and the Office of Historic Preservation administers 35 Main Street programs in California. And then locally, that contract is with the city and the Office of Historic Preservation. So that's the methodology of it, and there's training that goes on and conferencing that goes on all throughout the year.
Do we need the city council to lead? Do we need a leader, somebody to push the vision? Richard?
I think any community, any project of this nature and size needs a leader, but in this case I think it's a leader of a number of people or a group. I don't think the city or the city council has to be the leader. I think they have to absolutely participate with the organization that's going to, quote unquote, run the show, but I don't think it's going to be one person. It's going to be many people who are providing input to it.
And does the city council need to outline what it will allow to be built so that the individual people, the individual merchants can know what they're supposed to be doing?
Of course. I think that's critical. And I think along the way, that's why the conversations have to take place, so that when rezoning, if that has to happen, or new ways of looking at signage, those kinds of issues that are the purview of the city, that's when those conversations have to take place, so that new merchants that may be considering coming in and investing in our community know exactly what the rules are, what the limitations are, and what the opportunities are.
Dan, what's it like doing business in Del Mar right now? Do you get a sense you know what they want?
I think as far as the
revitalization,
or the revitalization, I have a unique situation having a restaurant in Encinitas also, and part of what Peter has done up there in Encinitas, the whole Main Street program, is what brought me in there 4 years ago. I was willing to invest in the area because I had seen what they're trying to do, and at that point when we went to open, I mean, we went into the city. I mean, they're all there to help you open, and I think everyone started pulling the rope the same direction. As I think here sometimes it feels like everyone's pulling against each other. Mm-hmm. And as far as, I mean, just from a merchant's point of view, it gets very frustrating sometimes, because, you know, you'll hear from the council, they want to do this and that, but then you're dealing with planning, you're dealing with whatever. I mean, it's just, that's, I think, probably one of the most important parts of the program, is everybody starts pulling in the same direction, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, on that point, it's an interesting point, because there's often perceived friction or real friction between a residential community and a commercial district in terms
Yes.
of their wants. But both parties need to understand that there is a link that ties those together that's inseparable, and that is that the health, to the extent that your commercial district is healthy, is to the extent that you're going to enjoy high property values and a high quality of life. And if your commercial district is degrading or falling into disrepair, so too will the property values around it. And if you think of any popular downtown, vibrant, alive, successful downtown, the neighborhoods surrounding it enjoy high property values. I think it's fair enough to say in the last 40 or 50 years in San Diego, maybe longer, Del Mar and La Jolla have enjoyed a reputation of having great downtowns. Del Mar still has a great downtown. And there's a reason why property values in La Jolla and Del Mar are great. So if the residents should be very, very active and involved in maintaining and making sure the commercial district has enough flexibility and leeway, and we don't put them in too small of a box, so they can be healthy and vibrant, because it helps everybody.
Well, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back to talk about the state of downtown Del Mar and what are the consequences of not changing. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about revitalization.
The Del Mar Village Association and L'Auberge Hotel are hosting a cocktail reception to honor Del Mar Village merchants. Don't miss this chance to network and kick off the summer season. Learn more about Main Street at www.mainstreet.org and get involved in Del Mar's Main Street program. Questions or comments to Jen Grove at adelphia.net or call 858-755-1179.
How often do you think about what you can do for your community? What do you know about the Main Street program and how it can make downtown vital, fun, and alive? With me to discuss these issues and more are Richard Ernest, Linda Rock, Peter Norby, and Dan Speaker. Tell the viewers, what will happen if we do nothing? What will happen?
If you don't mind, that scares me more than anything. I think Del Mar, when we were the only game in town, it was easy. People came from Carlsbad and everywhere. I mean, I'm just talking restaurants and shops and people shopping. But now there's so much development going on that restaurants are opening up. I mean, even Flower Hill, what they're doing over there, and other areas that we're not getting. I'd be afraid of those people stop coming into town. You know, instead of coming once a week or once, every 2 weeks, they come once a month or once every 2 months. And that would concern me, because that starts eroding your sales tax base.
But Richard, there are people in town who would like that.
I don't think that doing nothing is an option. I think life changes. We all change. The environment does. As we get older, we learn more. If you're gonna not look at change, you're going to get run over by it. I would much rather have us be in a position of saying, this is what we would like to have happen, and we'd like to control some of the change and make it end up like we want it to be, rather than what the rest of the world would like it to be. But I don't think you can not change.
There's also a serious fiscal issue at stake here. I mean, Del Mar is the smallest city in probably Southern California, and we have our own government, we have our own services, and that's a luxury that doesn't come cheap. And we've had, as a city, money taken away from the state over the last few years as they've had their financial problems. We've had revenues from the fairgrounds taken away. And so whereas we were sort of on the precipice before at being able sort of to sustain ourselves as a city and to provide the quality of services, it's just getting more and more difficult. And the city relies on transient occupancy tax and on sales tax revenue to support its infrastructure. And people want to be able to come into the city and have somebody deal with their problem or answer their phone call or their question. And unless we realize that merchants are sort of a vital component of providing us that revenue to sustain our city, and if we lose those merchants, I don't know that we'll have the option to remain independent as a city. But just rather than look at the negative, I just think I want to have that vitality. I want to have shops that are thriving. It's more fun to walk downtown and have other people hanging out and run into your neighbors and be able to stop in a shop and walk your dog and see your neighbors. and not have sort of decaying storefronts and shops that are closed in the afternoons. And it's just more fun to have a community that's active.
Can anyone disagree with that, Richard? You've been mayor. You know the constituency.
I agree completely with what Linda just said, and to even be more radical about it. People in town like the town the way it is, but they like their own fire department. They like their own beach maintenance. They like their own lifeguards. They like their roads being maintained by the city of Del Mar. There's a possibility if the downtown empties out and we don't have the kind of income that we're getting, we'll stop being a city. We'll have to become part of the county, unincorporated. We'll have to rely on somebody else for our future. And I think we'd much rather control our own future, and I think that most of the residents would like that as well.
Okay. Peter, anything?
If left to nothing, the do-nothing option, so to speak, and we have to understand that the marketplace has changed. The freeway system has changed the marketplace. We're more auto-centric than they used to be, and our buildings primarily are from the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. They're infrastructure deficient. Parking is hard. Access is hard. We're not immediately off the off-ramp, so to speak. They're harder to insure. We have ADA issues, and communities, and then the test is, well, what happens when other communities do that? And there is so much data out there, and the proof is in that if left to do nothing, these towns deteriorate, and then what happens is that you lose your buildings, basically. They become irrelevant, they're torn down, and then new buildings get put up, and you've lost that sense of place. So I define success one way monetarily, most certainly, but I would say that's kind of the Donald Trump version of success. How do you monetarily in your community to pay for services? But there's also the more kind of Mother Teresa. Does it feel good? Do you have community pride? Is it a source of excitement and exuberance when you go to a party to talk about your town, or are you always apologizing for it? So those types of measurements are also measurements of success, even though they're not monetary. So,
now, my impression is that the people who come to protest or people who come to city council meetings are the same 20 people. How do we get the community involved? What do we do so someone can start a crusade that we need to revitalize downtown?
I think the events are a good start. I think the problem is that the people that have moved here in the last 10 years have had to spend a lot of money on their homes, and they're busy working their tails off to support those big mortgages, and they don't have the bandwidth to think about what's going on at a city level because they've got other interests and so on. And so the people that have that active role tend to be people that have been here for a while for whatever reason, and maybe by having events and drawing people into downtown so they can see the tangible, more visible sort of aspects of Main Street, maybe that will encourage. But we really need, because we are a small town and we can make a difference. We're not just part of San Diego City. One person can make a difference. And so we just need those people to participate so that the end result is a result that reflects the views of everybody and not just that minority.
Now, how important is art to revitalization?
It's incredibly important, because what art does, basically what you want to avoid is being what I call a clip art city. You don't want to be a city that just pulls stuff out of a catalog and plops it down into your downtown. And when you have art and a collection of art from your community, it represents a unique identity, and that identity is Del Mar, and your expression of that is going to be different than other communities up and down. When a person who lives here or drives through here sees that expressed on the street somewhere or in the storefronts, they say, wow, something's happening here. It's colorful, it's alive, it's vibrant, it's not the kind of typical deployed, methodology, and there's something unique going on. So it's incredibly important. And then cultural activities at night. And a lot of times when we hear special events, we think about, oh my gosh, 50,000 people on the street and traffic's going to be blocked. But a menu of low-impact special events, which is just kind of strolling events, cultural events, theater events, those kinds of things where we're talking about a few hundred people or a few thousand people with minimal impact, those are actually more important than your one or two big signature events that you have a year.
And how do we get to translate that into revitalizing buildings? How do we get people to create businesses once that happens?
What you want to do in a town, and it's often thought that the town is about creating place. And it really isn't. It's about creating human relationships. And when you create human relationships, when you have the opportunity to have a chance encounter on the street with a neighbor and talk about something, you're at a special event, the community comes out. You know, we love theater, we love a Padre game when it's 40,000 people in the stands. We don't like it when there's 8,000 people in the stands. We love packed restaurants. We don't like it when the restaurant is empty.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so we're kind of social creatures and we need this social interaction. And so it's really about creating the dynamics where your population can come down and you know, mix and meet each other and integrate and network with each other. And then it's I often say, it's not about marketing the shoe, create a better shoe. If you create a demand for people to come down here and it's a nice place to go, the business community will take care of itself.
Got it. And what do you, Richard, you've been the mayor, what do you see the Del Mar hurdles that we have to cross to get this vision?
I think, first of all, I kind of like the restaurants not quite so crowded because then I can get in without a reservation.
Well, you get in, Richard. You're a famous guy here, you see.
But I think the hurdles are habits that we've had for decades, actually, and sort of the fear of change. I don't think this kind of change needs to be fearful, as long as we all communicate with each other about what it is we would like. But I think that Del Mar has a reputation of wanting to keep things just the way they are. And as Peter has said, it isn't the 30s anymore. It isn't the 40s anymore. It's not even the 80s anymore. And we have got to acknowledge what the outside world is showing us and be able to respond to that.
Got it. What do you see, Dan?
I agree with that. I mean, I think Linda made a great point earlier. And I don't know, Peter, because I wasn't in Encinitas when, you know, Main Street was starting and everything, but how do you get the people involved? How do you get the people active? Because everyone is working. They're busy. They get kids. They're, you know, whatever it takes. But everyone's got to take an ownership in this. And how do we get that done? How do we end the endless meetings and start doing? And, you know, stop talking, start doing, and getting people involved. I'd love to hear anything.
It's incremental. And it's small steps that are built upon and become larger steps and larger steps and larger steps. So you build on your small successes. Whatever your influences are that have caused you to get to this point are not something that has happened in a year or 6 months, but probably over the last 10 or 20 years. So Main Street is not a project that's going to say, we're going to fix you, it's going to cost you $3 million, we're going to fix you in 6 months. It's not. It's simply reversing this trend that you're seeing, stabilizing it, and then starting it to go in the other direction again. So it's small incremental changes and then building on small successes and making them larger successes.
But it also takes the leadership to say, and the drive and the will to do this and say, yes, we're going to run into potholes here. We're going to run into obstacles. We're going to run into resistance. But we believe in it so strongly, we're going to keep pushing through it, keep communicating and keep getting people involved. Even if they say no for 5 times in a row, we go back for the 6th time. And that's how I think that's sort of drive that has to be part of the leadership.
And where does the leadership come from? Give the viewers a concrete image. Where does it come from? Anyone? The city council? Or?
I think the things that we want to do are going to involve all the different constituents, and it's going to involve change. And, you know, cities and politicians and staff people all have to take risks, and they're by nature risk averse. That, you know, they tend to sort of feel comfortable with the status quo because they're not going to make a mistake if they do what they've been doing. And so I think we're slowly gaining the support of the staff and the council that this is a good thing and that we're going to make these incremental changes. The sky's not going to fall down, and we can continue to make more incremental changes. So we'll put the banners up, we'll put the signage up, and we're not going to look like a, you know, subdevelopment, and people will be happy and like it, and then we can go on to make small additional changes.
So do people get scared of, say, banners?
You know, it's inevitable in a town. Somebody's not going to like something, and the trick is we're just going to have to be comfortable that you're not going to get 100% buy-in on everything. And so that's the biggest hurdle I think we're going to face. We're going to have to move forward and, you know, make our way through it.
And
it's give and take. I know we were talking about the parking, and, you know, I don't want 90-minute parking in front of the restaurant. I like 2 hours. I like 4 hours, you know, sometimes. But you've got to give a little to get a little. Prime example, the holiday parade in Encinitas. I really hate that thing because it's on a Saturday night in the holiday season and I have to turn away Christmas parties. But I also love it because I've got how many people come through there and see the restaurant, the exposure to the downtown. So it's give and take. I mean, you're never going to have 100% of everything you want, but we have to learn how to get together on this stuff and really work together.
How critical is parking? Del Mar bugaboo. How critical is it?
In my opinion, and this is going to shock some people, it's not the biggest problem. It's a limiting factor. It's basically a capacity issue, but the biggest problem that you have is wanting people to come down here. And when I go out and speak and visit towns, parking is always addressed as the #1 problem, and if we can only fix parking, our town will be successful. They go out, they spend all this money, they build parking lots, and their stores are still empty, and nobody comes downtown, and they say, what happened? So it's not the thing that's going to make or break you. If it's a desirable place to come and it's exciting, people will find a way to get here and they'll find a way to park. But it is a capacity issue and it needs to be addressed in that context rather than the thing that will fix a city.
Got it. So what is the biggest factor? You gave that opening to me.
It's again creating this place that's exciting to come to, basically making it an exciting, vibrant destination that you want to go to. That's what you need to do.
And perhaps the last question, do we need to be flexible about rezoning? Is that an important issue in some cases?
My opinion is you need to be concerned about zoning. I don't know if it's necessarily flexible, but many cities go too far in one direction. Either they have too much residential, or they have too much office professional, or they have too much commercial. So what you want is a nice kind of livable community, a nice mixture of all those, and if you're going too far in one direction, you need to be concerned about that.
Quickly, what should the viewer do who wants to get involved?
First thing I would encourage them to do is contact the Del Mar Village Association. The Revitalization Committee and all of its subcommittees need plenty of talent. We have plenty of work to do, a lot of projects to work on, and you can just look and find look for the one that interests you the most and get involved. And we would welcome any and all people who want to get involved to help with this.
We've got committees on design. If you're artistically inclined, we've got public art. We've got public improvements.
I'm going to have to cut you off there.
You know,
I'd love to do that. Well, I hope you, the viewer, has learned a little bit more about the Main Street program and what you can do to get involved to make downtown a viable, fun, vibrant place. I'd like to thank my notable guests and for being here, Richard Ernest, our former mayor, Peter Norby, Dan Speaker, and Linda Rock. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Del Mar Hot Topics.